Buy my novel, Escape from the Village, from major booksellers online. Go to escapevillage.com. Subscribe to my Substack. Go to fountainheadforum.substack.com. Thank you. Welcome to the Party Pal. This is Fountainhead Forum 84. I've got Joram Roubique, who is a liberty activist who got his start in the state of Louisiana in the United States of America. He moved to Argentina, and he has been working on the campaign of Javier Milei and for Libertad Avanza, the party down, which is the Libertarian Party in Argentina. And he is graphic design, social media. He's done a lot of marketing. He's spent a lot of time volunteering his efforts for that campaign, and he's going to tell us about what's going on down there with the Milei campaign and also life as an American in Argentina. So how are you, Joram?
I'm doing very well, Chris. Thank you for having me. How are you doing?
Okay, I'm doing great. First of all, how did you become a liberty activist?
Well, for me, it started with Ron Paul back in 2008, as I think it did for most of us that are libertarians in the modern era, at least in the United States. So I think when you listen to people like Dave Smith and those types, we were all kind of won over by Ron Paul. And during that period of time, I've always been into graphic design, logo design, things like that. So I started to just make memes and start to just get involved. Also, I tried to get involved in the party in Louisiana, which is pretty, especially now, they're kind of like anti-Mises caucus. But I was able to ride with Walter Block to a libertarian meeting. It was like an hour and a half.
Walter Block and who?
Walter Block, and it was actually one of his assistants. It was, I think, it was a research assistant. And so it was like an hour and a half drive to the party meeting, just talking about libertarian ideas, privatization of roads and waterways and these type of things. If we get to the libertarian party meeting, and it's just more of that, and on the way back, it was just more of that. So it was just that encouragement that just kept me going. And since I've been here, I just wanted to be involved because I've known about Milei for the last about 3 years. I think it was 2019 or 2020 when I first learned about him. And he hasn't disappointed.
Yeah, that's good. So you've known about Milei, and you went to Argentina when?
In 2021.
Okay.
So it was like toward the end of the pandemic, I was able to finally get in.
Yeah, into the mass hysteria.
Yeah.
So you were there. You were there for the. What was it like down there? What was it like down there during the whole insanity of the pandemic?
It was horrible. I think Argentina had one of the most draconian policies, efforts in attacking the whole issue of the coronavirus, and people were locked into their homes for a long period of time. Children didn't go to school. I mean, it's a lot of like what happened in the United States, but it was a lot worse. There were curfews, there were police everywhere. I mean, at one point it looked like The Walking Dead. You drive somewhere and there's like nobody around. I think we all kind of experienced these things. But here, because the government is so huge and they're just that typical leftist centralized control type of government, that they really punish the people. I mean, businesses, when you think about the businesses that were hurt in the United States, think of the capital that the United States has. Now think of the capital that Argentina has, and the businesses that were lost here that haven't been able to be recovered. So, not to mention the mental health issues. I mean, a lot of the same things that happened everywhere were happening here, but the lockdowns were so much more harsh. And it was awful. My wife, couldn't leave her house for a long period of time, or if you did, you have to have a doctor's note. Like only doctors could travel on the road if they're going to see patients, or if you're going to the pharmacy to get medicine. So you had to go through like checkpoints where there's police. There were curfews. We had to be at home by it was 9 or 10 o'clock at night, even if you did go out to get something from a pharmacy. When I got here, there were still curfews. In fact, when I landed here, I had to take a COVID test immediately after I got off the plane. And I had to basically stay quarantined for 2 weeks in this house before I could move about in the among the general population. And after those 2 weeks, I had to have another COVID test. So it was like I didn't have to pay for it, well, I guess, nothing's free really. So I guess technically we're paying for it now through all the taxes they're stealing from us. But it was pretty bad.
Yeah, it seems also that, unfortunately, that South America very much has a culture of servility, and there wasn't as much pushback, and government control expands to the level that it's tolerated.
I agree.
Uh, it's all about what will the people put up with. So is it back to normal?
Yeah, for the most part, there's not really. You still see like the occasional person with a mask on. Unfortunately, I'm of course not a big fan of the vaccine, so that was pushed out. People weren't necessarily. I think if you were an essential worker, you had to get it. I think if you were like a teacher and stuff, you had to get it. So I mean, they really did force people in these situations in which they were like, well, I either get it or I don't have a job. You know.
Yeah,
So right now it's recovered a lot. And now that the COVID thing is starting to ramp up in the United States, I'm just hoping that before the election, we don't see some crazy thing where they're like, oh no, we have a COVID outbreak, we need to lock down. But I think you would see riots in the street because I think even though the people here tolerated it a bit, we also have to understand too that Argentina has a different perspective of things like even the right to bear arms. That's not a
yeah,
very widely accepted thing here. So in the United States, I think at least we have that going for us. As far as like, there's at least a little bit of fear, maybe in the politicians.
yeah.
But at the same time, I was extremely disappointed in how the I thought when it started, I was like, okay, all these other countries shutting down. There's no way this is going to happen here, or at least it's very, very, low possibility. And I was so disappointed to see how people just folded like lawn chairs.
You know, maybe it's a generational thing, but I wasn't that disappointed at how they folded, just because I saw how they folded back in September 2001.
Yeah,
Uh, and I think for a lot of libertarians were basically took the black pill in March of 2020, but some of us took it back then.
hmm
Uh, depending on how active you were. I don't know how active you were, how politically minded you were back then. So anyway, let's
very
get
much so.
this. So when did you first get on? For Milei, or for Libertad Avanza.
Well, I started. It wasn't long after I was here. It was the following October after I got
Yeah,
here. They had elections in 2021.
yeah,
I was with the guy that I'm with now, who was with the Libertarian Party Avanza Libertad, which is Jose Luis Espert's party, which is the party that Milei started with when he finally decided to move into politics, but
yeah,
has since separated from that party. Jose Luis Espert has really moved over into the kind of the traitor realm. It's very disappointing to see how he's turned out. However, that election I helped out with the party, with the Liberty Movement. That I was hoping that could kind of get something started. And it was good to see Milei run because I've been a fan of Milei for a while. And then it was at the beginning of this year. We started pretty late in the campaign, but we were able to come together and really start to, hit the streets and start making graphics and doing whatever we could to start reaching the people around here. And so I would say it was probably around late February, early March of this year when the campaign really kicked into gear. And
yes,
that was for La Libertad Avanza with Javier Milei's coalition, La Libertad Avanza.
yes,
But I'm here in Malvinas, Argentina, helping the La Libertad Avanza campaign here.
yes, yeah. Jose Luis Espert. He ran for president back in 2019, and didn't really got 1.47% of the vote. You said it looks like he had some free market credentials, but he didn't go very far. So
No,
what? Yeah,
no, I think he's a guy that would consider himself a classical liberal.
okay,
Um, Rather than, I mean, he would probably say he's libertarian, but I think he's like some people are kind of shy away from that term, maybe because it seems more extreme. maybe the term libertarianism here isn't as widely accepted as maybe the term liberal, which here obviously means more,
Yes.
liberal in the traditional sense rather than liberal in the sense that we have in the United States. But Jose Luis Espert in 2019, just before the election, I should say just before the election, but time before the election, was seen as like an up and coming like outsider. Ooh, this guy might do some damage, and well, he was totally, didn't impress anyone. And a lot of the detractors of Milei this time around were trying to say, oh, this same thing happened with Espert in 2019. They built him up, and then look how he failed. But this whole time, I'm like, and not just me, people that have just really been paying attention, like, Espert is not Milei. Milei is a rock star. This guy is coming on to the scene at the perfect time and is capturing the nation by storm. And that's something that Jose Luis Espert can't do, especially now since he's essentially moved on to the dark side.
What do you mean by the dark side?
Well, he started with his party in Avanza Libertad, which is, like I said, where Milei began when he started his political career. And since then, he's broken from Milei. They were friends prior to Milei announcing that he would be president. And he's moved over to Juntos por Cambio, Espert has, which is essentially the analog to the Republicans. It's probably the best kind of way. They're the conservadores. They call it, some of them are radicales, some of them are gorillas, which are people who are very anti-peronista. And then you have Frente de Todos, which is the more Democrat-like party where they're kind of more woke, but nothing like the Democrats are there. But when it comes to spending and that typical big, huge government that continues to expand and become a behemoth of this overbearing leviathan, those are kind of the two parties. And he moved over, the two big parties, and he moved over to Juntos por Cambio, which was one of the direct competitions to La Libertad Avanza. So he's been a disappointment politically, and then recently he's just kind of seen as a turncoat by a lot of people who are more the tried and true libertarians.
Yeah. Okay. So the party is Avanza Libertad, and the coalition is La Libertad Avanza.
Yeah, his was Avanza Libertad was Espert, and La Libertad Avanza was Milei's coalition. So it's kind of confusing. I kind of wish he had picked something a little different because it's so similar. But
liberty advances or freedom advances. Yeah, that's a great word. Yeah, I really appreciate that. So, yeah, so Milei is, but Milei, it sounds like Milei also really knows how to put on a show compared to, say, Espert.
Oh, definitely. Espert, when you listen to him, he's very intelligent. But he's kind of got like this arrogant vibe to him when he speaks. He's not somebody who, like, he might be very good with economics for the most part, but the way he comes across just isn't cool. I don't know. He's just kind of like the old way of doing things, because he's tried to get into politics and tried to get into office for years and years. Whereas you have a guy like Milei, who is just like, he's a rock star. We went to the close of his campaign the week before the election, the week before Las Paso, the primaries, and there was loud music. There were people everywhere, and he runs out onto the stage, and he's like, doing all this. He's dancing, and his hair's flying around, and he's running on this part of the stage, and they're running back, and he's shouting at the crowd, getting them worked up, and he's singing the songs, and I mean, he's just electric. And we're lucky to have a guy like that who can transmit the ideas of liberty. Because so many times you see these people come along for, the left or the right that seem to have like a personality that's enough to convince people. They don't really have to have like any sort of moral ideal, any sort of, principles that are foundational. They're just interesting, and that seems to be good enough. Or maybe they're just different, and that's good enough. Whereas here, Milei is not only interesting and exciting and new, different. He's consistent in his message and has been for a long, long time.
Yes, And being an expat and not being a citizen, you can't vote. You probably can you give money?
Yeah, as far as I know, but I can vote. I don't know if it's because I've been here for
Okay.
more than 2 years and I'm married, but I
Okay.
found out like 2 weeks before the election. Some friends that are working in the campaign who are also advisors, and one of them's actually running for office with the mayor, the mayoral candidate. She looked into it and was like, Joram, you can vote. I was like, what? That doesn't seem right. I'm not even a citizen. What do you mean I can vote? She's like, you're in the, I think it's called a padron. It's like a list of people who are eligible to vote, and my name was there. But because I'm not a citizen, I couldn't vote for everyone. I couldn't vote for Milei, but I was able to vote for, of course, the mayor here in the county or parish that I live in, and I was able to vote for the governor of Buenos Aires, who is Píparo, who is handpicked by Milei. So I was at least able to vote for those three. In fact, I don't know if you've seen a boleta or a ballot. Have you seen these yet? This is an Argentinian ballot.
Oh wow.
So it's Milei, of course, for president. And it's huge. So you've got Milei all the way over here, and you have all his people. Now, once you get here to Píparo, the governor, the candidate
Yes.
for governor, this way I could vote. So this guy is the guy that I'm with right now, and that's my friend Lorena. We're both very good people, and I'm excited about what we were able to accomplish this past primary, because we basically set records for all over the country for the most votes that any liberal or libertarian candidate has ever gotten. Here in Malvinas Argentinas, which is dominated by what we would consider the Democrat Party, Frente de Todos, we were expected to come in third with maybe 14 or 15% if we were lucky. Well, we came in second with 22.7 or 22.8%. Now we're a good distance behind Frente de Todos, but the fact that we were able to beat out Juntos por Cambio, who is the other big party, we've moved into like really being a competitor where we're no longer the third option. We're like the number one or the number two, depending on where you live. And here in Malvinas, we're fighting to be that number one because we've shown that thanks to the rising tide of Javier Milei, we were able to achieve that on top of the efforts that we were making. So moving forward toward October, we're really hoping that we can get close enough to pull this thing off. But it's been so exciting just seeing how really all over the country, just the night. I was also a fiscal. I was a guard for the vote. So my wife and I would go to different schools where people were voting. They were bringing these ballots to make sure people had ballots, because a lot of people were reporting at first like, hey, there's no ballots in the schools. I had to vote in blanco, which means you kind of vote for nobody. You have to vote because it's mandatory here. So if you don't have the ballot you
Yes.
want, you just put your name on the thing and you put your or you seal your envelope and you stick it in the thing. And it was like, I wasn't able to vote for Milei because there were no ballots. So at the start of it was like, man, they're stealing ballots. I mean, and this is something that's very common. In fact, here, like this boleta, this ballot, if this is torn in any way, if I tear it like this, for example, and I have a million of these, so don't worry. But if it's torn like this is not valid. So you have people, now in the Paso, it's more likely to be valid, but you have people that would walk in, it would tear it like this. So you walk in, all the ballots would be like this. And so you look at Milei and it's totally messed up and you can't use this. So a lot of us were like, oh, here we go. Here's the sabotage that's happening. And I do think that was happening because there were lots of photos going around of torn ballots and things. But now I began to realize that was a part of it, but it was that so.
Yeah. And you mentioned those other two parties. That was the Frente de Todos.
Oh, there we go. So we were going
these are coalitions, actually, not the parties. But
what's that?
You have coalitions and you have parties.
Right. So La Libertad Avanza is a coalition with multiple parties underneath that lean libertarian. And whereas Juntos por Cambio is a party and Frente de Todos is a party. But during this process, we were realizing that maybe they are stealing and turning ballots, but people are voting so much for Milei that we're running out of ballots. So that's why we were going from school to school, not only delivering ballots, but there's, I think every 10 voters, they allow the guard, I don't know what you call it in the United States. I can't really remember, but the fiscal, maybe the auditor, somebody that watches the votes and makes sure that there's enough votes for your, enough ballots for your party. Um, it was amazing at the end of the night when they started counting the ballots, because we're in there to make sure that they're not uh, tearing anything. They're being honest and open, and there's different. I guess fiscales is the word we use here for people who guard the vote from different parties, watching everybody count the votes, making sure everything was above reproach, so to speak, if that's even possible when it comes to elections. But we were able to pull off something pretty great. And as the night was going on, you're starting to see like each classroom we would go to make sure everybody was counting the ballots correctly. And we had to take pictures of all these different things. The mountains of ballots for Milei were like staggering, like more. I thought he would do well, but he did even better than we expected. And that night it was like a party. We went back to our locale here after we got the results, and we were all singing and dancing. If you follow me on Instagram or TikTok, because here TikTok is very popular, so to me I'm like, yeah, I know the Chinese own it, but if I can deliver ideas of liberty and try to connect to people, it's worth it. What are the Chinese going to do to me in this process that I'm trying to transmit these ideas of liberty? But if you follow me as accounts, I actually had video of the celebrations and the different things I was involved in, and just the excitement just around the country. And here especially, to me, it's like I was here for the World Cup championship, which was so much fun and fantastic. But for me, this is on a different planet. We're looking toward a future with real optimism and with real possibilities. And that's what's really, really important, because the average Argentinian here, they're fed up. They don't trust the government anymore. They don't trust the politicians anymore. And it's been a long time. So it was just a matter of time for somebody, in my opinion, like Milei, to show up and really just be the lightning rod that propelled the movement forward.
Yeah. So, and it seems as though here's a case where the voters in Argentina actually want leadership. I mean, it's a case where they're actually saying, yes, we want liberty, as opposed to just seeing liberty as it's some kind of joke. Have the voters, did the voters in Argentina just finally get smarter, or what? Because, or is it just a fluke that they're voting for Milei? And are they going to go back to voting for criminals and sociopaths in 4 years, or,
Well, it's very possible, because who knows what the state's going to throw at Milei if and when, hopefully, he becomes president. Um, but I think it's kind of a mix. It's a mix of him being able to deliver these ideas. And if you watch his interviews, because we watch him all the time, he's always on TV, he repeats himself a lot. So if you're somebody that likes Milei and you watch Milei a lot, like, you'll be able to tell what certain things he's going to say over and over again. But I think that's good, because he's drilling in these ideas. Like, he'll often ask people, "Are you in favor of robbery?" And they'll be like, "No." Okay. Well, that's what the central bank does. And so robbery is immoral. The central bank's immoral. Taxation is theft. And he'll explain these ideas over and over, but in a way that I think the average person can really understand. And he does it in a way that's very funny and fiery. And so I think it's a mix of people wanting change, and also Milei being that individual, being that unique person that comes along who's able to move a movement forward. Because without the individual, without that uniqueness of a person that's able to just put things together and just be that influence at the right time, I think a lot of it has to do with Milei as a person, and how consistent and just how driven he is. There's like no, it's hard to find any inconsistencies in anything he said. He's very much like Ron Paul when it comes to, for the years and years and years, been warning about the same things he's predicted, like what would happen with the dollar. Like, one of his things is the dollar has no ceiling here, whereas the peso has no floor. So he's like a big pro-dollarization, very big pro-dollar, very pro-US, um, very friendly with the United States. And so I don't know, it's just been so exciting to be a part of this and really see that. I hope um, that this movement moves forward. And what I'm hoping is that if Milei can get in, and I'm not expecting him to be, some anarcho-capitalist, just day one. It's a libertarian country overnight. But I'm hoping that if he can implement his chainsaw plan and really take out certain elements of the government, he wants to eliminate a bunch of different ministries, different agencies, federal agencies. And if he can do that and open up the market, and the people really see how these policies are really the philosophy of just freedom works, I think that is what could really propel the movement even further. So if he could be that guy to start the fire, which he already has, but if he can be the one to really keep it going after he's gone, if people have benefited enough in that period of time, I think we really could see Argentina be a libertarian leaning country for a good period of time. And I really think that if Milei becomes president in October, that Argentina could be that shining light on a hill that illuminates the world, and really opens people's eyes to see, oh, this is look what happened to that country in such a short period of time, with just these subtle changes, and some not so subtle. But look how much better off those people are. They can feed their families so much easier. They can find work so much easier. They can have their own businesses so much easier, and they can be so much happier being freer. And that's really what I'm hoping, is that the reverberations of this movement is what keeps it going.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Really though, I mean, he's got 7 million votes, which is triple the number of votes, more than triple the number of votes Ron Paul ever got, and this is in a much smaller country. So,
Well, and two, he doesn't have a party like Ron Paul did, who would sabotage him, because he's
yeah,
essentially the leader of La Libertad Avanza, the coalition,
true.
and he's got a lot of support. So there's no, and they have kind of. I'm not a fan of Trump, but I think you just look how the media has treated Trump, how the Department of Justice has treated Trump. They're coming after the guy. The January 6th people, there's a axe to grind against these particular people. Whereas with Milei, there's no anti-Milei group within La Libertad Avanza. It's Milei from pretty much the top down, and his team is actually very impressive. Just about everybody is an outsider. Just about everybody is either an economist, or they're a business owner, or they're like a stockbroker, somebody who's involved in finances and understands
Yeah,
economics from either an Austrian point of view, Austrian school point of view, or a Chicago school point of view. I've just been very impressed with his team, and really just how consistent and good he's been.
yeah. So, how do you think he attracted good people?
Uh, I think just by being a good guy, being a good person, being somebody who's been very consistent. A lot of the people who've been on this team, he's known for many years, um,
Yeah,
and they've been around him for a while. It's very. I don't think there are that many people who he's only met over the last couple of years that are on his team. I'm sure there are, but it seems like most of the people on his team are loyal. There's no turncoats that I've seen. Everybody's, when they go on TV and they start to debate ideas, they're all so solid, and it's
yeah,
so encouraging. There might be one or two I'm like, oh, okay, well, I kind of disagree there, but overall, it's just so impressive to see a team like this. If they can win in October, the good things they can do. And it caused me to rethink the idea that there's no point in voting. Just give up, take the black pill. It'll all collapse anyway, accelerationism, whatever. But Argentina is showing that the third party option, or the outsider option, can work, depending on the circumstances. And here,
yeah,
if libertarians and people who like Milei didn't go to vote because they were like, who cares about the vote? He's going to lose anyway. It's all corrupt. Well, he wouldn't have done what he did. It was going out and voting that has pushed us into this realm. And even though I think voting is one of the worst forms of organizing society and deciding what happens with a nation, you have to work with what you got. And I see voting as a form of self-defense, not a great one, but it is a form of self-defense to vote down taxes and to vote for people who might be more likely to vote down taxes. And that's kind of my perspective.
Well, yeah, what I'm getting at is it sounds like the Milei campaign, which probably has hundreds of volunteers, if not possibly thousands.
Oh yeah.
It sounds like to me though, he's actually managed to attract a lot of quality people to work for him. I mean, for example, people who are, we'll just say that people who look like winners and act like winners and talk like winners. I mean somebody like Tony Robbins, for example, or somebody who goes out and just puts out a positive vibe and says, yeah, go, we're going to win, and do you really ever see that in the American liberty movement?
Rarely. The most encouragement I've felt with the Libertarian Party in particular as the Mises Caucus takeover, but other than that, there hasn't been much to be positive about.
Yeah, and it sounds like most of the people who are working under Milei are actually focused on winning, and they're probably working to build each other up and make each other better. Whereas again in America, they're just just interested in criticizing people, or they call themselves libertarians, but they want to see other libertarians fail.
Yeah, it's very divisive.
I guess that's kind of the culture that winning breeds. As opposed to when you have a political party that's basically been going sideways for 40 years.
Right.
Sometimes you do get to that point too, where instead of the bad driving out the good drives out the bad.
Mm-hmm. And his team being so strong, he said from the start, they pretty much all have. They've been very open to look, we're dedicating our time and resources to winning the presidency. If you want to run as a libertarian, we're all for it, especially if you're genuine, but don't expect any money from the campaign. This has been a total grassroots movement. The party I'm a part of, or the campaign, I'm a part of here, it's all us volunteering our own time, our own money, our own effort to make this stuff happen. We're not getting money from Milei or any campaign. No party is handing us money.
And they're also going out with the attitude of we're campaigning to win. We're not just, you sometimes say, I'm here to get the message out. Winning gets winning gets the message out.
Right.
If you pursue winning, all the other things come with that. You get the message out, but it's
the one thing
because you're never going to get what you want, so you have to aim for more than what you want.
Right. You shoot for the moon in order to land among the stars.
Yeah. Or another way, like Vince Lombardi once said, we are not going to achieve perfection, but by pursuing perfection, we will achieve excellence. So.
Well, and that's why when you look at Milei, he's so consistent. He's not perfect. He's a human being. He's a weird guy. I'll be honest with you. There's certain things about Milei I'm like, man, I wish this was different. But beggars can't be choosers. And nobody's perfect. But he's been so consistent and so good. And he's won in so many different aspects to the point where his biggest win is really the cultural battle. Because he's been saying that this is a cultural, like Olga Maria said, it's true. He says it all the time. This is a moral fight. This is a cultural battle, and it's one that we have to win because socialism is a virus that has infected Argentina and really everywhere it feels like, but especially in South America. And he's wanting to uproot it. And he's pretty much single-handedly ended the career of Christina Kirchner and her movement, which has been something that alone,
Yeah.
Argentina should be grateful for. I am, and even though I'm not technically an Argentinian according to the state, this is where I am. This is my home. This is the place that I'm wanting to defend and see be a freer nation. And so for me,
Yeah.
I'm fantastic to see him defeat the bad guys. Like
Yeah.
I'm very much like Michael Malice. I don't know that the good guys will win, but I believe they can, and that's what we're
Yeah.
doing here. We're winning. The good guys are winning, and it's just so
Yeah.
exciting and so uplifting and encouraging.
And I'm glad you mentioned Malice because I think he's one of the better ambassadors out there. He has
Yeah.
that sardonic wit about him that it's occasionally, uh, you know, you can make you laugh. Malice is kind of weird, but he's weird in an endearing way. You can be weird, being weird but without being scary, because sometimes you
Right.
can be weird, but you kind of scare people.
Right. I'm weird,
You're
but I
weird,
mean,
you're,
if you're
I
weird with
guess,
style,
yeah,
you can get away with a lot more. And the thing about Milei is
yeah,
he's got a lot of style. People criticize him for this, that, and the other, and some things, like I said, I have my reservations because nobody's perfect.
yeah. I
Overall,
and I think that's another thing, about style. It seems like he's got that look that's going for him, and you got to have a look when you're running for
right.
office. Sometimes you'll see him wearing the shirt and the tie, and then the black leather jacket, his hair. One of my previous guests talked about apparently
The
he's got an actress.
sideburns.
He's got an actress girlfriend. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's news that broke over the
Yeah,
last week. I think her name's like
yeah,
Fatima or something like that.
yeah,
But
yeah,
she's actually
yeah.
an impersonator. I
Fatima
think.
Flores. Yeah, but
Yeah, that's it.
I thought of that when I saw that, and I said, yes, this is where a good woman can definitely be a very valuable asset.
For
Because she
sure.
probably has some influence on that look, and she's saying, yes, this is what works. And she's in that kind of business where you have to create a look and market yourself. And yeah, she goes out and apparently impersonates various celebrities, and I read that list of people she did. It was very interesting.
Mhm.
Interesting too, that Milei has apparently never been married and doesn't have any kids.
No, he's got several. Well, I'll say several dogs. I can't remember how many dogs he has.
Yeah,
He
I
has
think I've heard
dogs.
he's got 5 dads, and
Yeah, I think it's
apparently
five.
he's also very pretty has a very tight relationship with his sister. Sounds like.
Yes, Karina. He calls
Yeah,
her El Jefe, which is the
yeah,
boss. He
yeah,
really credits her for being the reason why this is all working because she's
yeah,
been there as his support, being like, you know, don't worry about what they're saying about you. This is a moment where Argentina needs you, that sort of thing. Just being that rock for him, and he's very open about it. They're very, very close, and they had a tough childhood, and I think that's helped
yeah,
bond them when they were younger, and they just kept that bond. And he's somebody that's very, very special to her. But the media and his opponents will use that against him, because they're like, oh, it's so weird how close he is to his sister, and this sort of thing. And sometimes I wonder, it's like, have y'all ever had siblings? I'm one of five, and for me, it's like there are a few things more precious to me than my brothers and sister. So
I,
I can totally
I
understand where he's coming from, and
yeah.
I think she's very, very important to this movement as well.
Is his sister older or younger?
Older, I believe.
Okay, that's one thing too, though, and I suspect that when the media criticizes him for that, that probably doesn't go over well with the public. I generally get the impression that Argentina is a much more pro-family country, and I mean, and it's a country where marriage is still taken seriously. I mean, for example, what's the divorce rate in your country? What's the divorce rate down there?
I really don't know. I can look it up for you if you want.
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
yeah. I
But I
mean,
will say that Argentina is they're just more traditional.
oh yeah,
They're very Catholic culture, which I'm not religious,
yeah,
but I have an appreciation for
yeah.
Christianity. I feel like the United States has lost that connection with
Oh
Christianity.
yeah,
I find is very, very important. Even though I'm not, like I said, I'm not religious, but I'm an ally. I consider myself a cultural Christian, and so I feel like
yeah,
Christianity is like our last stand against communism. And so, in a place like where it's more Catholic, it's a little more traditional, and
yeah,
so it's less corrupted by the woke mentality because that stuff doesn't
Yes.
fly here as much.
Well, yeah. Well, one thing about the communists, and I think they realized also is and why they're succeeding so well in America is they realize you also have to completely demonize men, which is what's happened. I mean, I imagine, for example, in Argentina, you can probably ask a woman at your workplace for a date. You can't do that in America.
Oh no, no, no. Well, I mean, if you did, you better be very careful. You better
Yeah.
like have a
Okay.
list
Okay.
of like pros
Okay.
and
Okay. Okay.
cons.
You can't. Okay. You can't then. If you have to be very careful, you can't. That's
No, I'm saying in the United States.
yeah.
Here,
Yeah.
yeah. I don't think you really have
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
worry.
It's a case where I mean, in America, there was that that one guy I wrote, he was at work one time and he just innocently asked a woman, "What are you doing this weekend?" "Oh, he's asking me out on a date." I said, "No, he's asking you what you're doing this weekend."
Mhm.
I mean, it's just so,
Well, and that stuff doesn't fly here because
yeah,
Argentina is still a very has still a very masculine culture, and
yeah,
so there's just I don't know. You don't see like that feminist movement really take. They're around and they're annoying. Don't get me wrong. And the Frente de Todos, the people in power right now in the government, are the ones that tend to give them a voice. But it's if it wasn't for the state giving those people a voice, mostly, I mean, just like the United States, they wouldn't have near the influence they do, and they don't have very much. So it's just different. People just don't. For example, one thing they've tried to push forward, the leftists and the feminists and stuff, is this. It's called lenguaje inclusivo, so inclusive language, because Spanish is very gendered. So you have like las manos, so it's a feminine term, and you have like uh,
yes,
el camino, so it's
yeah,
a
yeah.
masculine gender.
Yeah. I've always wondered, gender is applied to everything, and I do wonder how that impacts the culture because we only apply gender to things that actually have gender.
Right. Yeah, like
You know,
biological gender.
you have masculine and feminine nouns. Coche is my car. That's a masculine noun. Uh, dia is day. That's a feminine noun. I mean, it's like, okay, why is it this way? I don't really understand, but for some reason it is. Uh,
Right. Kind of complex.
that's
But
always been a very curious thing for me, but
it
I've
could
wondered
be
what the purpose is, but it is definitely something that's real.
it could be a reason why they're more traditional. Because if you think
Yeah.
the language you're using has these divisions, and it's not like a division where when you use la, it's for things that are less important. When you use el, it's for things that are more important. It's just there's separate two separate genders. But what these feminists do, and what these leftists do here, is they try to force changes in the language because they instead of saying las manos, it would be like les manes because they want to replace the o and the a with an e. So really, it should be lenguaje inclusive if they were being consistent. But the left is hardly ever consistent unless they're just being completely ridiculous. And
Now they're
but that
never
that
consistent
sort
with
of
all.
movement doesn't really hasn't really taken hold. It's really been criticized, and I don't think it has much of a chance, especially now.
Yeah, I hope it doesn't have much of a chance, but I can imagine that 50 years ago, people didn't think something like this would have much of a chance either.
Oh no! Well, it's just like
And,
with child transitionings and
oh yeah,
all these horrible things. That's like horror stories. Like,
and something else too, Joram. This is another thing that's big for me. Too. My grandfather walked to school 2 miles each way as a first grader. You probably have a culture where kids are still allowed to do things, and mom and dad don't have to worry about child protective services being called because the kids are in danger.
well, I think depending on where you are, because for example, in the area that I live in, there's certain spots that are pretty spotty, and unfortunately,
Well,
when it
well,
comes
yeah. There's ghettos. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think generally speaking, you're correct, but I also think the state has damaged the situation for kids in a way where I mean it was like a month ago there was a kid that was 13 years old that was shot just like maybe a mile away from here,
Well, yeah, yeah. Kids get shot, but I'm talking about something like you
just being
know,
allowed to ride your bike down the street without having to worry that sort
or
of thing.
my mother leaving me in the car for about 5 minutes with the motor running.
Yeah,
You know,
that kind of stuff. Yeah,
yeah,
they
nobody
don't
gets.
worry about that
I'm
kind of
talking
stuff.
about. I'm talking about. You are allowed to parent your kids the way that you want to parent your kids.
Yeah, for the
You
most
know,
part. For the most part, yeah.
I can go to Peru and see 5 or 6 year old kids piloting canoes on big rivers.
Mm,
And they're not wearing life jackets. In America, all these things are considered child abuse now.
yeah.
I think it's humongous. I think it's probably more destructive than feminism, but I also think feminism is tied into that in a way because now I think if everybody was having kids, I suspect a lot of these people are calling the police don't have kids of their own, and they don't understand that having kids is difficult,
Hmm.
and and because now so many mom and dad want to contract out their parental duties and just send their kids off to school and whatever, and really they want to have kids, but they don't want to parent them. I
Hmm.
mean,
Yeah.
there's no animal on earth that tries to contract out its parental responsibilities the way that Homo sapiens do. It's very interesting.
Right.
Oh, I had these, try to get between a mama bear and her cubs, or a lion and her cubs, and see what happens.
Right.
But you get between a parent, and a Homo sapien and their kids. It's like, okay, I'll give you my kid. You can do what you want with him.
Right.
I mean,
Well,
it's
one thing, it is better here in certain ways. I
yeah,
understand what you're saying, but there are other things that I'm really hoping that as Milei gets started, that I mean, for example, like when I'm talking to people here, I was homeschooled for many years. In fact, I graduated. Like I didn't graduate from high school. I was homeschooled, then I went to college a couple years later. And but when you tell people that here, they're like, homeschooled. What is that?
yeah,
Like they're clueless because they're and then for a lot of them they can't, like, your parents teach you. Do your parents have any like certifications, any kind of training,
yeah,
this sort of thing? So I'm hoping that even that kind of idea, the homeschooling, will begin to be introduced over a period
yeah,
of time. Of course, not right away, but Milei has introduced things like vouchers. Just
yeah,
like he's people accused him of wanting to privatize all of the public schools, which is, he's never said that.
yeah.
He's had a
Our
particular plan, and he's not cutting people off of their food
yeah,
stamps or their social plans or anything like that. He's going to
but
gut the state to
yeah,
save money that way, so that hopefully as things improve economically, people will not need those plans.
but I suppose in some of these places, maybe the kids just don't get into the system at all because they're just, you know, it might be a place where it's just easier to keep your kids at home and nobody really asks any questions about it. Am I right about
Probably,
that? Yeah,
probably in the more like the more interior parts of the country, because Buenos Aires has the lion's share of the population, the
yeah, yeah,
province of Buenos Aires. But when you
yeah,
go to places like Jujuy or La Pampa, Las Pampas,
yeah,
you see like there's fewer people. It's more campo. It's more like country. There's probably more cows than people in some of these places, which
yes.
actually would, it shouldn't
Are
shock
there?
you if you've ever been to Argentina.
Yeah,
But
we have. Yeah,
these areas, I would imagine it's more of like the wild west, so to speak.
yeah. If I go to down south, here's the big question: are there more penguins than people?
Ah, yeah. In fact, that's what people refer to the Kirchneristas. The Kirchner and her husband, they referred to them as penguins because they were from.
So more penguins overall than people. That's that. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
yeah.
depending on where you go. In fact, Argentina claims a piece of Antarctica as their own.
Yes,
So, so you can imagine in that part of the of Argentina, there's far more penguins than people. But yeah, in the southern part of Argentina, there's tons of penguins.
oh yeah, I knew that. Yeah, yeah, the population is 46 million right now. Yeah, people still have pretty big families there, or fairly smaller families, or what's the
Ah, um, well, I don't know specifically, but from my experience being here, because it is more traditional, you just tend to see
yeah,
families that at least have children. You typically don't see like a married couple without kids, and usually you see more than one. But it does seem like the younger people have fewer kids
yeah,
than, especially the more middle and upper class. So, but generally speaking, yeah, it seems like family and bigger families are a normal thing
Yeah.
because you have to think that the Argentinians are essentially a mix of the Italians and the Spanish, like for a huge bulk of the population. So you can imagine these Catholics coming together, intermarrying. They had
Yeah.
massive families on both sides. Like my wife's family, it's tons of cousins and aunts and uncles that she saw all the time that were always involved in her life. Grandparents on both sides got along.
Yeah.
So whereas like where I grew up in Louisiana, it was not. We had a big family, but not quite as, I guess, widespread. Like my family is pretty big. We're pretty close, but I had friends
Yes.
that were estranged from their family, didn't have real close connections
Yeah.
with them. But here, it seems like everybody does.
Yes. That's since you're from Louisiana, it's very important that you introduce your friends down there to jambalaya, one of the great
Yeah,
Louisiana cuisines.
there's actually a restaurant here that serves jambalaya. I haven't ordered it
Yeah.
because it's one of those things. It's like, would you order like like a taco from a Chinese restaurant in China? You know what I mean? So it's like I've had the
Yes.
best jambalaya there is, so I've kind of
Yes.
avoided it. But Argentinians here also, and this has nothing to do with politics, but Argentinians here tend not to like spicy food like at
Okay. Yeah.
all, and
Yeah.
so and jambalaya typically has at least a little spice. And here, even if you put a little bit of pepper in something, like ooh, ooh, ah, ooh, whereas in Louisiana, we're so conditioned to it. When I came here, they have this stuff that's called la puta que te parió, and it's essentially like little peppers diced up and put in vinegar and olive oil. I love it, and it's pretty spicy, but I can handle it because I like spicy stuff. So I'll put it on empanadas and all
Yeah.
kinds of stuff. But people here that have tried it, I mean, it's like they've put a blowtorch in their mouth,
Yeah. I
and
think
it's, and it's Argentinian.
people just have different tastes. Yeah. So we're getting a little off of the Milei situation here. Who are some of the good people on really great people on Milei's team? Let's give them some shout outs here, whether they can speak English or not.
Yeah, well, actually, there's looking at the list here. There's this guy Alberto Venegas Lynch. He's an economist. He speaks English. Actually,
Yeah.
I met him.
Oh yeah,
He,
yeah. We talked about him, Alberto Benegas Lynch. Yeah, he's affiliated with Cato. Yeah,
he he's actually really really good. He speaks English. Anytime I've seen him
yeah,
debate, he's just
yeah,
he's just dead on. He
yeah.
says the right thing.
What do you think? Who are some of the influences on some of the people on Milei's team? I mean, I've heard Milei was influenced by Murray Rothbard, Ludwig von Mises. I don't know. Do you hear Ayn Rand's name come up, or
Yeah, yeah, I've
when people
heard.
are talking about politics and stuff, who are their heroes?
Oh, that's the thing. It's like almost like living a libertarian dream in a sense,
Yeah,
because it's like when he started to get involved. Really, when I first started learning about him, seeing him on TV, seeing him talk about Ayn Rand and Murray Rothbard and Walter Block, Hayek, Mises.
yeah,
I think he's even mentioned Hoppe at one point. I mean, it's like all of like our heroes. I should say
yeah,
I shouldn't say ours, but at least a lot of my heroes are his heroes. And you don't see in the United States people mentioning Ayn Rand or Mises
yeah,
or Hayek or any of these people on national TV on a regular basis. Like Ron Paul would,
yeah,
but since him, like you don't hear anybody talk about that. Maybe if Dave Smith goes on like the Five on Fox News or something, you might
yeah,
hear it. But here you have a guy in Millet where those are his heroes. His heroes are the people.
yeah,
He's a huge fan of Milton Friedman, so you could,
yeah,
he wasn't perfect, but he's a huge fan of Milton Friedman and the Chicago School. But he considers himself like a hybrid of an Austrian school, Chicago school, but more Austrian. Like he's more Misesian, Rothbardian. In fact, one of his dogs is named Murray after Murray Rothbard,
yes, I knew
and
that. Yeah,
one of
Murray.
them is named Milton as well after Milton Friedman. So like his
Yeah,
influence has been like the ones that you want to be the influences for the guy who's going to be president.
yeah. One thing there is a concern about. You sometimes hear a politician or somebody in government cite, "Oh, I was so influenced by this person. You should read this book." And I know we have these people in America that it's kind of a crude term, but I call them Ayn Rand masturbators.
Oh, okay.
And the classic example of that for me is Alan Greenspan.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
But also,
Favorite of Fed.
and not necessarily in government, but I also say that about Mark Cuban. These people claim to be big fans of Ayn Rand, but they have not done anything ever to put her ideas in place.
No, what's like Paul Ryan was like that. I remember Paul Ryan when he was
Yeah,
running as
yeah,
the vice presidential candidate for, was it Mitt Romney,
yeah.
talking
Paul
about Ayn
Ryan,
Rand. It's like, don't even speak her name, dude. Like, there's
and that's
nothing
the worst
about
thing.
you.
And then you hear the media, and they're like saying, "Well, oh, this is Ayn Rand in action," and even worse.
No.
There's been this other guy who's been that ARI, that the Ayn Rand Institute's been giving a platform. Some guy named Mesha Dalja. Uh, he's totally worshiping Anthony Fauci. Uh,
Oh, Lord.
I mean, yeah, it's just it's absolutely amazing. You got these people who say they're fans of Ayn Rand, but they don't do anything to put Ayn Rand into practice.
No.
It's really strange. It's like you buy a guitar, say that you're a guitar player, but then you just leave the guitar in your box in a closet, and you never get it out, take it out and play it, or go try to do any gigs. It's
Right. And you tarnish the name of the
yeah,
person that you claim to represent or believe in or whatever,
yeah,
because then people start to associate your ideas, your
oh
bad
yeah,
ideas, with them when you're like not
yeah,
even going along with what their
yeah,
viewpoints were or their philosophy
yeah,
was.
yeah. What else do you think is making Milei a hit in Argentina?
Um, I think it's just a matter of exposure. I think that has a lot to do with it. I think his first TV appearance was like 2015. So you have to think that he hasn't been on in the public sphere like Trump, for example. Is pretty much like my whole life I've known who Trump is. Milei,
Oh
people
yeah,
just kind of found out, unless they were people who were really interested in economics, because by the time he showed up on TV, he had already written
yeah,
books, he was a professor, he had written all kind of articles, and he was on TV because he was like this funny, bombastic character with these different ideas, and he was fiery and he debated, and he got
yeah,
ratings. Well, over this period of time, and it's funny because a friend of mine told me recently, he's like, I don't think they realized the monster they created by putting this guy on TV, because I think that was kind of a catalyst in a way. So he became kind of this celebrity, kind of like Trump, in which people knew the name, they were very familiar with him, and originally he was seen as like a clown, somebody with the crazy hair, and he's loud and he's ferocious in his debates.
yes,
But as he started to move into politics, it seemed like all those years of his consistency, and you can go back and watch tons of his interviews going back several years, and he says a lot of the same things. And I bring up Ron Paul a lot, but it's very similar, and I think that's why this movement here, like I've said before, I feel like I've been a part of two libertarian movements. One in with starting with Ron Paul, and now here with Millet, and
yeah,
it's got that similar vibe of just like somebody who's consistent and somebody who's, I haven't met him, but the people that I've spoken to and the interviews that I've seen, everybody's like, he's so genuine. And he's actually said once he moved into politics, he's like, hey, just so you know, we've looked into your background and we can't find anything on you. And he's like, well, that's good, right? And they're like, no, because that means they're going to invent stuff. So he's so clean that they have nothing on the guy. Even when he was on TV, he said weird things like he was into tantric sex, and he's got dog. He'd rather have dogs, or he doesn't support the idea of marriage being like this lifelong contract. He's kind of got a controversial view on marriage, but his ideas have been out there and he's stood behind them. And so people, when somebody's like, yeah, but he's into tantric sex, for example, people are like, yeah, so what? He said it like 5 years ago. Like, you're still talking about that? What does that matter? And so it's like every time they try to take him down, every time they try to go after him, he seems to just kind of bounce back or just move up in the polls. And I think a lot of it has to do with not just the moment and who he is, but also that he's kind of been exposing these ideas for a while. And he's been getting that following of people who were paying attention to him, even if they didn't like him, where I think he's won a lot of people over, that those people who didn't like him, I think he's won them over. so there's so many different aspects. Like I said, I think the main thing is Milei himself, the unique individual that is kind of facilitating this whole thing, this whole movement. Um, but really, the person that put him on TV and the next person that invited him, they didn't realize the monster they created, and I think
Yeah.
that's a big part of it.
Well, it often happens very gradually, but then it happens quickly.
Right.
Uh, what uh, so yeah, so what is the are the so-called journalists trying to derail him now, or what's their attitude toward Milei now?
Yeah, it's very similar to well, just your typical character assassination. You know, you'll see a headline pop up where they accuse him of doing something, and there's no evidence for it. For example, there was some looting that started a few days ago. It was last week, and you're starting to see this happen around the country, as if it was this coordinated event in several different provinces. You see like looters just kind of come out of nowhere. It's like nobody just spontaneously loots at the same time within a matter of a couple of days. Well, the national government came out. Cerruti, who is the speaker, the altaos, I can't remember the press secretary essentially, came out, blamed Millet, blamed La Libertad Avanza, saying it was in chat messages that they were organizing looting and riots and all this sort of stuff. Well, like a day or two later, the guy who was organizing all this came out and said that he was the one that was organizing all this online and WhatsApp and all these chats and things. And so Millet has filed legal action against Cerruti, the press secretary. And I think the judge is moving on with that case. So there's been several times where somebody has made an accusation against Millet, and he's actually what is it, started litigation or initiated a case against them that has been successful. So generally speaking, he's not going to go after everybody because it seems like everybody comes out of the woodwork, especially now, because there's these things called pautas, I think is what it is, where it's like journalists can get paid by the state, like a stipend, so to speak. Well, he's going to cut that off because that's one of the things. He's like, one of the reasons y'all are coming out against us and the liberty movement is because you're paid by the bad guys. And once we take over, all that's coming to an end. All of your little subsidies and all the people that feed you money to spread the stories that they want you to spread, all that's coming to an end. So yeah, he's getting it from all sides, but he's like I don't know, he's just taking it in stride. And like I said, every time he seems to be attacked, he just gets more popular because they have to invent something or try to dredge up something that we already know and we've already come to grips with or don't care about. So he just keeps chugging along.
Yeah.
How did you come to find out about Millet?
Uh, well, he's gotten a lot of attention, but also through Olga's video with interview with you.
Oh, great.
That's when I started following you. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Well, see, that's why I do this because this is one of the things that I've been wanting to do is bridge the gap between the liberty movement in the United States and the liberty movement in Argentina is to if and I know this is going to be controversial with people who hate Trump because I'm not a big Trump guy, but if Trump becomes president and if Milei is president, we're going to see a relationship between the United States and Argentina that we've never seen before because Milei is actually very friendly with Trump and Trump has said positive things about Milei recently. And like Milei, that's the one thing. A lot of people, as much as they hate Trump, in Argentina, the libertarians here are just different. And I think it's one of those things where beggars can't be choosers. In the United States, libertarians, we tend to be somewhat privileged, as much as I hate that word, because the left ruins stuff like problematic or privileged.
Yes.
There's nothing wrong with the word, but they ruin things. And so when I say privileged, I mean that like when you live in a country where like the right to bear arms is a normal thing, when you're kind of the birthplace of modern libertarianism and you have all these books in English, pretty much go online, find whatever you want, it's in English, whereas here you don't see that as much. but it's changing, and people are starting to, I guess, arrancar. They're starting the engine. They're getting it. It's being propelled in a way that I know, at least I feel like it's going to be very successful.
Well, it's already being very successful, and I think there are a lot of lessons that can be learned from this. We have to study. You have to study what works and really study what works, and then you learn how to recreate it again. This is by far the most successful libertarian campaign of any politician anywhere that I know of. If anybody has come close to being this successful, I'm completely unaware of them.
There's another guy you need to check out. He's not. I don't think he's as good as Milei, but he's pretty good. Is Bukele? Is it
Nayib Bukele? Yes. Yeah. He's done things like make Bitcoin legal tender, but I have a lot of doubts about him with civil liberties and things like that.
Like I said, he's not as good.
Bukele is, yes.
He's still, like, when you compare him to everybody else.
Well, again, you can say, well, yeah, some shit smells bad and some shit doesn't smell so bad. But yeah, but are we comparing him to the standards of what liberty is? That's
right. But that's what I was saying about our libertarians in the United States. We tend to be more privileged because we have this purity test that sometimes is so high that we would rather not take this guy who might be better because he doesn't, fit the litmus test. Whereas in Argentina, libertarians here in Argentina are very pro-Trump. Yeah. And Milei is very pro-Trump. His team is very pro-Trump. Yeah. Not because Trump is like some moral character, but because it's so bad here that somebody like Trump would be a godsend. So you look at in San Salvador, where before Bukele took power, the murder rate was ridiculous. After he took power, the murder rate drops 47%. The guy's got like a 90% approval rating, and I'm not justifying any of the evil that he's done. But when you consider the alternative, you have to say, okay, I can kind of understand why Argentinians like Trump. I shouldn't say Argentinians, the libertarian Argentinians like Trump, because he's like Milei in the way that he just fights back and he's relentless, and he represents that kind of, whether it's true or not, he represents kind of this pushback to the left, that to the wokeness. And well, I don't know. I guess, like, since I've been here, that's one of the things that I've noticed is, like, in the United States, the libertarians hate Trump, and I'm not a big fan. But here, it's totally opposite, because it's like they don't have the luxury of being purists.
Yeah.
So they see, like, okay, that guy, if he was here, we would take him. He's not perfect. He's orange, all that. But compared to Alberto Fernandez, Mauricio Macri, Cristina Kirchner, please. Yeah. But they have somebody immensely, infinitely better than Trump and Milei, and Argentinians are blessed to have him, the guy who's leading the pack, and not somebody like Donald Trump. Which Trump is a guy who, okay, he might win, he might usher in something, but it's not going to last. Well, whereas this, because it's based on liberty and he's sincere and he's consistent, there's a much better chance for those libertarian ideals to take root and to succeed.
Well, there is one thing about Trump, is that there is often the fact that he has been willing to call a spade, and call out the left for what they really are, and they've played exactly into his hands by just acting like the barbarians that they are. I mean, I have no attitudes that after coronavirus, I have no attitudes that the left will ever be civilized. But American libertarians also blame Trump also because he promoted the coronavirus too.
That's the unforgivable thing for me for Trump. Like, even before COVID, I was not a fan of Trump, but it was better than Hillary.
What's that mean? He's better than Hillary.
Well, I mean, I imagine Hillary would have probably wanted to start more wars and probably escalate Russia.
I mean, we're libertarians. We're not about figuring out how to race to the bottom. That's what the two-party system is. It's this declining spiral of just having candidates who are worse and worse, and it's a race to the bottom. It
is.
He's better than Hillary. It's like, so what?
Would
You
you
draw
rather
cards in
eat?
3 beats of 2. Yeah,
Well, it's like, would you rather eat a turd or smell a fart? Well, I'd rather smell a
yeah,
fart, to be honest. And that's what
yeah,
Trump, in my opinion, is as
yeah,
compared to
yeah,
Hillary.
yeah. I'm just, I'm,
But I understand the aggravation with Trump because, like I said, for me, the unforgivable sin was just folding like a lawn chair during the whole COVID thing.
oh yeah, yeah, and he
He's
promoted it.
he's the reason Fauci had the power he had. He's so proud of this Operation Warp Speed disaster, and
yeah,
he doesn't. That's one bad thing is he doesn't relent. He doesn't apologize. I think that's good for the most part. But for me, that's what totally
yeah,
ruined Trump for me.
yeah.
But I'll say
And it,
this. Let me say this.
yeah,
One very, very important thing, and it's something that libertarians need to change when it comes to their approach to politics, is you've got to be ruthless. Be upstanding.
yeah,
Be should I say morally minded or at least ethically minded. Like take into consideration the people that are on your team and the people that you're fighting for, but be ruthless. Call a spade, like you just said.
yeah,
And that's
I
what
agree. Oh
Milei's
yeah,
done. He calls leftists zurdos
ruthless.
de mierda, like Olga Maria said, which
Yeah,
is like shitty leftists. He calls them parasites. He calls them chorros,
oh yeah,
ladrones, thieves. He's
yeah,
just, and it's so passionate about his like hatred of what they do.
yeah,
And it's not like this. That's the difference between him and like Esper.
yeah,
Is that Esper is your traditional political
yeah,
guy who's not going to get worked up. He's very calm. Milei, no, he's just going to come and he's not going to stop because he knows that he believes in what he says. He's got the data to back it
yeah,
up, and he's not going to back down from anybody. And that's really how we have to be. We have to say, okay,
yeah,
they're going to call us Nazis, they're going to call us racists, they're going to call us this. So what?
yeah,
Call
yeah.
them
That's true.
murderers, call them thieves, call them liars,
Yeah,
and that's true. That's what they are.
yeah,
They can
that's true.
call us lies, they can lie about us, but let's tell
Yeah,
the truth about them in a way that people it connects with the average person and the anger and the
yeah.
frustration that they're feeling.
Yeah, I agree. That's and even similar, to Reagan when he called the Soviet Union the evil empire. It doesn't have to be, ruthless can mean a whole lot of different things, but just being honest about what it is, calling evil evil, and just uh, you know, uh,
Well, and to
yeah,
Reagan's credit, he was a very good communicator, in my opinion.
yeah,
I think he had a good speaking voice. Whoever wasn't Buchanan was like one of his speechwriters, I think, but his speeches were pretty solid, even though he didn't really do a lot of what he said because he would talk about liberty and things, and he wasn't
yeah,
like the most libertarian president. But um, that time, I think, is past. Like the time for arguments are just about over when it comes
yeah,
to dealing with the state.
yeah,
The treating politicians as if they're these respected members of society, the angels of society that are going to organize society for us, so that we can finally have some sort of peace and prosperity because of what they do for us. No,
yeah,
we gotta look at them as the liars, the thieves, the murderers, the warmongers that they are, and be
yeah,
brutal about it.
yeah,
And it's going to take somebody that's able to do that in a way that appeals to a lot of people.
and
Because you
yeah,
can't do that and be somebody that's, I don't know, like Trump. It's good that he's like that, but because he's so bad on so many things, it's hard to
yeah.
really take him seriously.
Well. The worst thing about Trump too, though, is Trump hardly has any consistent ideology at all. I mean, he's, I mean, but yeah, it's very interesting. Milei has an ideology and he seems quite consistent with it.
Oh yeah, I mean, Millet is tried and true libertarian. Like I said, he's been very consistent. If you go back and read his books, read his watch his interviews. Whereas Trump, I mean, he was a Democrat and then he's Republican, and then I mean, he's basically like a '90s Democrat. I mean, he's very pro LGBT and all this. And I'm not,
Yeah,
anti-gay, so to speak, but he tends to court stupid things, and it seems like he's just kind of impulse guy. He's got decent instincts and he goes off of that, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't,
yeah,
and there's no underlying philosophy or ideology that's solid, that backs up
yeah,
Trump's, I don't know, presence, I guess, in the
yeah,
political realm. Whereas Milei, it's the opposite. Not only is he fight back and he punches back, he calls a spade, but it's built around a philosophy and an ideology that's solid and something that's like just consistent and logical and makes sense.
And I think a lot of Americans, and maybe it's that way too, are just fed up with the constant appeasement of the left that has really been going on for a long time. And it's like Milo Yiannopoulos once said. He said, "As much as I hate the left, I hate the conservatives of my father's and grandfather's generation more than I hate the left."
Hmm.
Because he says they didn't fight.
No.
And if they hadn't fought, we would not be in the situation we are now. I mean,
and it's like Michael Malice says,
Yeah.
conservative is just a progressive driving the speed limit. I mean,
Yeah,
eventually they're going to get to where the progressives are. They're just going to be
Yeah.
way slower getting there. So it's like we can't rely on the
Yeah.
conservatives to be the one that really propel us forward into a better future. No. We have to ally with the ones that are reasonable, but move forward with the message of liberty and
Yeah, and really,
just keep chugging along with that message.
And really, it's kind of like another thing too is the only way to get somebody to, if somebody is pushing forward, the only way to get them to stop is to try to push them back.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to get them, if you're only trying to stop them, they're still going to, you have to push back with, and they've,
you have to,
they're not
equal playing field. Like if they're shooting bazookas at you, you're not going to take a 9mm.
Yeah, and you've got because as it's been pointed out, they haven't conserved anything.
No,
and really, and the left gets upset because I don't know what it is about conservatism though that's just made it completely worthless in so many places. But it's just, but I think also because Milei has a clear vision of what he's going to bring, I think it's very positive. Milei. Is there any English stuff out there with Malay and English or not?
The only thing I've seen are videos with English subtitles. In fact, I'm working on
videos with
English
subtitles. Yes, but I mean him speaking English.
No, other than a word here or there or expression. For example, I'm actually editing a video where I'm trying to translate what he says because it's like his angriest moments. So it's some of the funniest things he said. But in this video, he's speaking Spanish, and then he refers to, I think it's a chapter from one of Milton Friedman's books, and he says it in English.
Yeah.
And it's very thick Argentinian accent. But other than those moments where he says words that are either, proper nouns or what have you, or they're words that don't have a translation in Spanish, so they're just adopted.
Yes.
For example, outsider. There's not really like there's probably some Spanish word for that, but he says, soy un outsider.
Is there a word for insider too, or
I guess for him it'd be chorro.
Yeah.
Ladrón. Somebody la casta política.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very interesting. Well, in Spanish, there'd probably be a word for a feminine outsider and a word for a masculine outsider.
Right. Yeah, ladrona, chorro.
Yeah. That would make sense, but yeah, Spanish is a great language. I think we've covered. I think there's anything more to say about Milei or not. I think we've covered most of Milei.
I just hope that people continue to keep their finger on the pulse of what's going on in Argentina.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's attracted a lot of attention from libertarians and even a lot of right wings. I saw that Ted Cruz, of all people, was like, "Can we get this guy to debate in the Republican primary debate?" And of course, I'm like, "Please, you wish."
Yeah, Cruz is interesting. One thing I wanted to ask you, tell us a little more. How's been expat life in Argentina? I mean, you think you might become a citizen? You think you're going to stay there?
Yeah, I've applied for citizenship. It was like a year ago. Everything takes so long here.
I can imagine.
Everything takes so long. There's so much red tape. Like the United States, the government's horrible. But like I said, I don't know if it's because we're more pro-gun that it moves a little quicker. But here, everything takes forever. For example, my wife and I have been trying to facilitate a project we have here, trying to start our mental health facility, actually. And the hoops we have to jump through, the taxes we've had to pay. I mean, it's like we finally, after 2 years of advance past the local mayor approval, and now we've got to go provincial, and then after that we have to go national. So we have to pass through like three separate
Oh, geez, yeah.
passes. Yeah. So imagine you're in Texas, you want to open up a health clinic, and then you have to
Yes,
get
I know.
their city approval, the county, and the federal, the state, and the national government to approve it. It's just,
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, yeah.
so
You know,
overall, I want to start making YouTube videos on this actually because there's so much
yeah.
I can say, but there's so
And
many positive aspects, but there's also things that are very difficult. So I think if you're coming here, like I'm here to live here and start a family with my wife, so this is my home. Of course, Louisiana is always going to mean a lot to me because for me, I've always considered myself more of a Louisianian than I'm an American because I've never cared about what goes on in New York. I'm more concerned about what's going on in Baton Rouge and Shreveport and that sort of thing. Um, so if
yeah,
you do move here, you got to know the language. You have to be ready to be um, exposed to very aggressive drivers, those things. But on the flip side of those, supposedly negative things, you have like a real sense of community. And the people of Argentina are really great. They're really great people. They remind me of people from the South. It's very family oriented. Louisiana is very Catholic, so it's not something that's strange to me. Um,
yeah.
so it's just and the food here is great. The meat is the best in the world, and I am a huge fan of beef. So coming here and eating Argentinian beef, it's like, oh, this is something different. I mean, the beef in Louisiana is good. The beef in California is good. I've had beef. But you come here and it's like it's just different. To me, the milk's better, the butter's better, and maybe that's just rainbows and sunshine on my part, but. There are just certain elements of Argentina, whether it be the food, or the people, or the culture, which are kind of all intertwined.
I
It's just
yeah,
it's really wonderful, despite the stuff that the government. Because that's the thing. If you get rid of the government, okay, or at least most of the problems with the government, everything else here is fantastic. They have so much resources. They have such a good culture. They have such a good people, and there's not so much like division. Like I was telling you before, like there's more of a monoculture here. Now somebody might be like, well, come on, there's like Spanish and there's Italians and you got some Chinese. But generally speaking, this is a Catholic culture. Uh, Whether they are indigenous, like they're like 10% European and they're 90% indigenous, they're going to identify as European. That's just how they are here. They love Italy. They have a very friendly relationship with Spain. Um, it's different. Whereas in the United States, you have races being pitted against one another.
yeah,
The states, you have the West against the East and the South against
yeah.
the North. Here, it's you have your divisions, but it's a lot harder to divide and conquer when there's not so many competing cultures. And like for
Well,
example, I was in the interview with Olga Maria. She was like, "Oh no, there are a lot of indigenous people in Argentina, which is true. There are a lot, but there's not as many as maybe people might think, like compared to maybe Peru or
well,
Colombia. And there's
well.
hardly any black people here, as far as like. But generally speaking, people here, like even the Germans that came over after World War II, they assimilated, because when you can go to towns and hear that where people still speak German, but they still identify as Argentinian, and so there's more of like a united. It feels more like a nation, and I think you have to be careful with nationalism and all this. But
Yeah.
I think nationalism in the classical sense, if I can use the word classical in this
Well,
regard, I think
well,
is a
well. You don't have. It sounds like to me though. There isn't. I mean, all of the what's going on in America right now is due to the fact that corrupt leftists are stirring the pot.
yeah.
That's all it is. That's all it is anymore. I mean, there is hardly any racism or anything like that at all in America. We mostly have become a monoculture at this point. But I think also,
Well, the political like culture
yeah,
seems
yeah. I
like the
mean,
Republicans have no backbone, the conservatives have no backbone.
yeah,
Like the left, the left is in charge. Like you look
I
at
mean,
Hollywood, the media, the politics.
The left is in charge of everything. I mean, I think the biggest thing right now. I mean, I think the biggest war right now in America is the fact that we're there is definitely a gap now between male and female that is. I don't know how this is going to end. Talking about somebody who calls a spade a spade. What do people in Argentina think of Andrew Tate? Now
Well,
there's a guy who calls a spade a spade.
right. If they know who he is, they probably wouldn't have much of a problem with
They
him.
probably but in a place that's not completely messed up, Andrew Tate probably doesn't have any influence because there isn't there's I mean and
No, I know what you mean, especially
you
young men who are
realize
struggling to
sometimes
have an influence, like a
yeah
positive influence in their life.
I mean the most potentially because sometimes you know if you have 20 something men getting angry, that can be a real problem.
Oh,
If
yeah.
they feel like they're completely disenfranchised, uh, where does it go from there? You know,
Well, especially if they feel like they can't find a good woman, or
yeah,
maybe even they give up.
oh
Like I
yeah,
was kind of on the verge of that myself. Like maybe just love isn't for me, and then I found my wife. So thankfully I didn't give up, but I had my doubts, and I found my
yeah,
wife outside of the United States. But it's definitely I don't know, contentious there. Even when I worked at Louisiana State University in an office, and my coworkers were more often than not fantastic. But like in the last department I worked in, I was the only guy, and it was like even in that setting before, and this was things were getting woke, but not near as bad as it is
yeah,
now. There were like I felt like I couldn't say anything. Like a lot of times I'm like, well, I kind of want a job, so I guess I'll just kind of go along with this, which made me feel crappy because you're kind of like going against your own convictions. But yeah, I got to the point where it's like a lot of things were very gynocentric, I guess you could say, where
yeah,
it's like a lot of the programs were like, well, we're going to go do this and we're going to do this. I was like, wow, this is very like everything's like
yeah,
from a feminine perspective. Like, and if I would put out my perspective, they would be like, yeah, but Jordan, not everybody's like you. Okay, well, thanks for just
yeah,
totally dismissing my viewpoint, just because I'm a guy, or not just because I'm a guy, because I'm a particular kind of guy, you know.
yes,
So it's I don't know. I can totally
yes,
understand where you're coming from because you see, like I said, that division where it's like it's not being from Louisiana. Like I grew up with black people. I had black friends here. I would have black friends if I was in more contact with them. But that's like something normal for me. Like my parents weren't racist. I'm not a racist. In fact, I had black friends where we would make racist jokes toward one another. Like I worked at Albertsons, a grocery store there, and I had a friend where it was like we made jokes about each other's race and would make each other laugh. It was
yes.
so much
Okay,
fun.
yeah, yeah.
And like, I
Okay,
mean,
yeah.
yeah.
Let's get back to the gender issue.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah,
so when it comes to so you have the divisions in race, and then you have the divisions in gender, and you have the divisions between the different cultures. Like even if you look at
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah. You have divisions of gender here in America that I don't know how they're going to because we've gotten to a point where men I think a lot of men don't really have any hope of getting married and having kids, and it's
it's tragic. I mean, you don't want to see a birth rate drop. You don't want to see people. I mean,
and
look at Japan. It's really sad.
Japan is a very interesting study, and I don't know how or why that's happened there. I think largely maybe just because Japan is such a tightly packed country, but America, but you also have like a high percentage of women now who take some kind of psychoactive drugs. It's really, I mean, it's hurting both. It's hurting both sides, and and
Maybe AI and robots will force certain portions of the population to become more traditional in order to
yeah, I don't
compete
know,
with.
but that's why I have a lot of faith in South America. If South America can clean up its corruption and get rid of the socialist influences of the Sao Paulo forums, the Sao Paulo forum and groups like that, I think South America can really do really well because they still believe in marriage and family there, and men and women are still men and women.
True. I think it's a positive thing. I think Argentina is very fortunate to be in the situation it's in. I don't have that much hope for South America in general, based on that, because to me,
Yeah,
South America is very like pro-authoritarian, very
yeah,
very cult of personality, and
yeah,
Milei's a part of that. But it's working out in our favor this time, you know. So I
yeah,
think I think there are aspects of what you're saying that are true, that are accurate,
yeah.
but at the same time, it's like you said earlier, the people are responsible for the government that they have to a
Yeah,
large
and could
degree.
they just as easy fall for the complete opposite cult of personality in 8 years or something?
Right.
That is the major concern here. It's but I think maybe the most positive thing about Milei is that he's probably going to inspire another generation of little Mileis, uh,
Sure.
and
Absolutely.
that could be a huge influence on the country in the long term, and maybe even in other countries. Do you know about his relationships with other people I heard that he and Maria Corina Machado are pretty good friends.
I'm not sure. I'm not
She's
sure.
in Venezuela.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she's the capitalist opposition in Venezuela. She's a real hero
Good. That's
because
fantastic.
she's
I'll
because
have to look
she's
into
she's
it.
putting her life on the line.
That's
Yeah,
great. Well,
yeah,
here, pulling it back to Argentina, here in Argentina, we're very fortunate to have. So you have Milei,
yeah,
but you have like this movement of young people. Like, because Milei won the youth vote. You can be as young as 16 and vote here. So
yes,
Milei is considered cool. And that's what I was telling my wife over the last couple of years. I was like, what we have to win the cultural battle. We have to get it to where libertarianism and liberty is seen as the cool idea, and socialism and communism and even conservatism to a degree is looked at. Those are the old ideas that tried to ruin something that was working. And we just being here and seeing so many young people come into the fold, like the day before, several days in fact in a row before the election, we were folding ballots, and I mean there were people all over the place helping us. And I was sitting across from a young guy who probably couldn't have been any more than 19, 20 years old, and he's talking about the history of the Argentinian peso and what happened during Minim and then what happened after Minim. And it was like, wow, this guy's so young. And he's not the only one. There's multiple people in their teens and their 20s that have a real grasp of economics and have read Rothbard and have read Mises. And with Millet coming in to bring Ron Paul back, it just like how I experienced and how a lot of us experienced. Once Ron Paul kind of showed a light on certain things that maybe we weren't paying attention to before, that just kind of set us on our way. That kind of just allowed us to see a different perspective that led us to a better path, so to speak. And Milei's doing that now. There's the seeds have been planted, they're being watered, and we're just going to continue to see this movement grow over a period of time, I think, because it's a youthful movement. It's not just, I don't think it's this flash in the pan thing. It might be, and I might be wrong. I hope not, but I think this is something that we need to be encouraged about. Like, we're winning. That's the
yeah,
bottom line. We're winning, and it's such a
yeah,
positive vibe. The momentum that we have moving forward. I think Milei actually moved up a couple points since the last, like
yeah,
one of the latest polls. So he just continues to just get more popular. And
yeah,
Argentinians are also, they go with whoever the winner is. So a lot of people, even though there's a chance some wonky thing could happen, some corruption, what's looking like Milei
yeah,
is it's pretty much a sure thing.
yeah, yeah. Well, incidentally, I've also heard that there's a lot of Bitcoin users in your country.
Yeah, there's a lot of apps too. That's the thing. There's a lot of advanced technology here, um, and there's things like well, there's just different apps in which you can exchange money. So you could put your credit card in, use pesos to buy a fraction of Bitcoin or a fraction of some other cryptocurrency, or even dollars. Because in the United States, how we look at cryptocurrency and gold and precious metals, here people look at dollars like we look at gold and precious metals and cryptocurrency. Usually, the people here that are dealing in Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies and things like that are people that are pretty financially aware and probably have some money to play with. Whereas the average person, they would much rather have dollars than the peso, because the peso just continues to lose value. The last time I checked, and it's been a few days, because we have a blue dollar. There's so many different dollars. Because you have like a dollar that's based on Malbec, which is a type of wine. And you have the blue dollar, which is pretty much the market value of the dollar. And it's constantly going up. For example, the last time I looked, I think it was $1 is equal to like 750 pesos. And it might be closer to like 800 now. And it just continues to go up. And a lot of people are also thinking too that the government that's in power now knows that they're not going to win, so they're just going to let everything tank as bad as they can for the next couple months, and then just hand Milei a problem that's going to seem so hard to fix. But I think he's got solutions, and he's consistent in his message. You can read his books, you can see his interviews, and see exactly what he has to say, exactly what he's going to do. He's very clear about it, and I think it's going to work. He's not going to be perfect, and that's the thing. I'm not expecting, like I said, some perfect libertarian president. I'm just expecting there to be changes that will propel Argentina into a direction in which they can catch momentum and keep this movement going, and realize that, all right, we were better off 100 years ago under liberal or libertarian policies, and it's been terrible since then, really, economically, and just kind of just degrading over time. And now they're trending back toward liberalism or libertarianism. And it's just, I think it's going to be a positive thing.
Yeah, I definitely think it's going to be. And did it have to get this bad for a Milei to happen?
Part of me thinks so, yeah, because I'm one of those people that thinks that it's always got to be worse before it gets better. It's always darkest before the dawn.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's kind of one of those things where, like, to me, in the United States, the solution is national divorce. Like, I want to see Louisiana. Hopefully, before I die, I get to see Louisiana be an independent nation. I don't think I'll see that, but to think that one tiny city on the East Coast can govern a nation of what, 350 million people, it's just ridiculous. I don't know how you can fix that. I don't know how you can come up with a system in which Washington can work again, as if it really ever worked. But I don't know. It just seems like in the United States, it's more of an uphill battle, and hopefully, maybe the two-tier justice system thing we're starting to see, maybe that'll lead to a sort of a breaking away in which people are starting to say, wait, if you have money, you're a politician, you can get away with a lot more than what you used to. Of course, they always did, but now it's like blatant out in the open. So here, because things are so bad, and it was a perfect storm. Things are so bad. The last several presidents, well, pretty much all the presidents have been pretty bad for the last 100 years. And you have a guy like Milei he's saying something new because of the people who destroyed this ideology that was popular here for a long period of time. So it might seem new, but really it's an Argentinian tradition to be libertarian. Like Juan Bautista Alberdi is basically the Thomas Jefferson, so to speak, of Argentina, and somebody that Milei still reveres. He was the architect of the Constitution and based the Constitution of Argentina on the Constitution of the United States. And so, like, the way things began were a whole lot better than they have been. Of course, this is a country with a lot of civil war and things, but when you look 100 years ago, like the turn of the 19th century, they had, Milei says, the biggest economy, or the per capita, the best economy in the world. And the statists and the dictators and the militarists and all these people destroyed it. And now liberalism or libertarianism is making a comeback, and it's coming back strong.
Yes, Juan Bautista Alberdi.
Yes.
That looks like, 1810 to 1884. Influenced the Constitution of 1853. That's definitely somebody who might be worth looking up. Oh, his father was Basque. not Spanish, but Basque.
Right.
When you talk about the Spanish and Italian, it makes me wonder: are they Catalans? Yeah. Yes.
No, it's like I don't know. It's a weird hybrid of people here because it's I don't
Yeah.
know. It's just different. Because Louisiana we have German and French, and French and Italian, but here you have like
Yes.
Spanish and Italian. It's like it's just a different vibe, different culture. The
Yeah.
architecture is different. You can see those influences. Like I said, there's places where the
Yes.
Germans and the Swiss, and there's Welsh colonies. There's I mean, there's so many different cool things here, and there's so much about this whole, I don't know, the sense of community that it feels like Argentina has, that it's not like a collectivism. It's more of like finally there's somebody that kind of understands what we're going through and knows maybe a way out of this. That's what it really feels like. And I don't know.
Yeah.
I think come October, we're going to be in a good position to be able to demonstrate to the world what liberal, and I mean liberal from the real meaning.
True sense of the word. Yes.
Exactly. The libertarian, what these principles really can do when put into effect.
I hope so. I'm naturally wondering what kind of roadblocks he'll run into if he is elected. But if he gets a mandate, maybe they'll follow the lead.
It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting. You never know. But if I'm thinking he might be kind of like a Perón type character where he is, I hate to say authoritarian, but that he uses the similar methods that the leftist or maybe the authoritarian right wingers, what have you, have used to the advantage of the people. Where because he said before, if Congress doesn't go along with what I want, then I'm going to go with basically like fiat. He's gonna go with like these declarations in which he can kind of force things through because they do it. It's one of those things. They use all the tricks in the book, but then once somebody that deserves to be there, if you can even say that, they want them to go by every single rule, and you're violating this, and you're violating that. Just like the Democrats. When the Democrats are in power, they love the Constitution. When the Republicans are in power, they love the Constitution. It's just ridiculous. But I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see. It's just a different feeling.
It's so ridiculous when I hear conservatives and libertarians complain, for example, about Saul Alinsky in his books that says, well, like, I don't admire Saul Alinsky's goals, but I admire his methods.
Right. It's right there.
Because they're effective. It works. I mean, and there's, I have to admit, COVID and just seeing how barbarous the left is, it just.
No, that was
it really, the thing that really got me though, is it actually changed my mind on abortion. And I just said, and I look at it now and just say, if Gretchen Whitmer or Jacinda Ardern want an abortion, I'm not going to stand in their way. This is the most effective way to allow the trash to take itself out, and don't get in the way of that happening. Let the trash take itself out.
No, I can understand that perspective. I can see it. Because typically it's not the right wingers and the conservatives that are
I don't I don't think it's about ideology. I don't think it's about education. I think it's more really almost like trying to rehabilitate a drug addict.
Mm-hmm. How do you do that?
Sometimes it works, but most of the time it fails. Right. And it's your best case scenario is that the drug addict gets clean and sober.
Right.
Otherwise, you have to figure out a way to render the drug addict completely harmless. Mm. And you don't want to, but if they die before they can have kids, that's probably better than most outcomes.
Well, that's one way to look at it. I will say this: Argentina is generally very pro-life. In fact, I think it was 2 years ago they actually passed like a bill that legalized abortion.
Yeah.
But I think it's one of those things where like the most of the population aren't happy about it, but there's enough people in Congress to be able to push this thing through for, whatever reason, appeal to the
Well,
feminists and to look like they really care about
yeah.
women's issues, because now there's a Department of Women, and
Oh, geez.
yeah, and that's one of the departments that Milei says he's going to close.
Oh, yeah.
That
Well, this is the thing too. Outlawing abortion, it's not going to stop it. If you have a lot of people who want abortions, you have greater problems that the government can't solve.
right.
If you want to reduce the number of abortions, you need to promote a culture of individual responsibility, because abortion is the ultimate admission of irresponsibility. It's, oh, I got pregnant and I could have taken all these other precautions, but I didn't take them, and so now I have to do this.
Right.
And
And
all
also,
of those precautions are much less risky and they're a lot cheaper.
wow.
I mean, what does a condom cost? I don't know what an abortion costs, but what does a condom cost? It's
I know.
yeah,
Be careful. You can't even do that. Like, if
yeah,
you have the potential of bringing a child into the world, any chance you take action, so to speak. So it's like to not
yeah,
even to care and to be careful. It's just there's that careless recklessness. Um, but thankfully here it's I was actually asked recently by somebody in the campaign. They're like, so how would you answer the question of abortion when it comes from the like a libertarian, because they know I'm anarcho-capitalist, from a libertarian perspective. So you don't trust the state to really do anything. So when it comes to abortion, like what do you feel about that? And I gave them what I consider the most consistent libertarian answer is like, this is a social problem. This is an issue where that the community's got to solve. Do you really expect politicians to figure that out for us? And I think, like, I would rather, in an ideal situation, it not be illegal from the standpoint where, I mean, are they going to jail women that have abortions? Are they going to jail the doctors and this sort of thing? But really put the onus on the people in the community to figure it out, instead of like passing laws and expecting police to kick down doors and politicians to figure this out. And surprisingly, they seem surprised by the answer, and not in a bad way, but actually like, well, that kind of makes sense. You don't sound like you're pro-abortion, but you're also not somebody who's, this vehement anti-abortion guy. Which I'm very very anti-abortion, but I'm anti-state.
yeah.
Their solutions are horrible. So I mean, when I think of a problem so bad as abortion, the state is the least likely candidate for me to go to for an answer.
Yeah, I agree. I don't.
And
Yeah,
that goes for just about everything.
you're in Buenos Aires. What are some of the other great cities to go check out in Argentina?
Oh,
Cordoba, Rosario.
there we go. For me, one of the most beautiful places on earth that I've been to is a place called San Martin de los Andes. It's in the south. It's in the mountains. It's beautiful. The little town there is so clean. It's so the structure. It was like built by, I think, the Swiss and the Germans. So a lot of the structures, like, there's a lot of wood. It just looks like you're like in the Alps. It's just different. And in fact, we had our honeymoon there. It was wonderful. And just the people were very helpful, very nice. Bariloche is another place that's beautiful. There's mountains, lakes,
Yeah,
rivers.
San Martin de los Andes. Yes, Saint
Yeah,
Martin of the Andes. Yeah, that's
wonderful
near the
place.
border. It looks like
What's in what, Neuquén or Rio?
it's near the
Rio
border with
Negro?
Chile, though.
Yeah, it's south though, so it's
Yeah,
pretty cold. But more toward the north, which is not far from Buenos Aires, you have Cordoba, the province of Cordoba.
Cordoba. Yeah, what was that other? You were talking about another city too.
Um, there's one Villa General. Yeah, Villa General Belgrano. So like a village general Belgrano. That's where
Villa
see
Villa what?
General, like general.
General.
Belgrano.
Oh,
And that's where they have.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
That's where they have Oktoberfest, and it's like a little German town in near the mountains, and it's awesome. It's a little tiny town, but all the different shops and the architecture there is just so cool. And next to that, I shouldn't say next, it's like 45 minutes away. It might be a little closer, maybe a little further, but it's La Cumbrecita.
Yes.
And it's like this little town that's really close to the mountains.
Yes.
See, these are just really fantastic places to visit if you ever come to Argentina. In fact, I've been to Santa Fe.
Santa Fe, yeah, I've heard about that. Yeah,
which is the province north of us, which is apparently very. There's a lot of drug traffickers there. But I've been in San Lorenzo and places in Santa Fe that I thought were beautiful because there's the Santa Fe. Man, I can't remember the capital. Rosario,
yeah.
It's like on the river. It's just such a cool. It's like a little baby Buenos Aires, but like on like a river. I think it's. Well, I'm not gonna lie and say I know what the name of it is. I probably do, but I don't want to make that mistake and say the wrong name. But I really enjoyed going there. There's so many little towns, even in Buenos Aires, like little tiny towns. Like there's a place called Carlos Quim, and it's like a little gaucho town. It looks like something from like the 1920s. The buildings are very old, and you still have these people that they show up in the morning with as much food for their restaurant, and once they run out, that's it, And but they have like little shops and kind of like a farmer's market. You can buy plants, and it's just there's like little towns like just here in Buenos Aires that you can visit on the weekends that are just interesting. They're a blast to see all the different little crafts and little knives for asado because I like weaponry and stuff like that, and cutlery and the type of craftsmanship that goes into some of the things they make. And also one thing that's very popular here, as you probably know, is mate, yerba, which is like a tea.
Oh yes, yerba mate.
See, that's unique to Argentina, and in Uruguay and Paraguay, but Argentina is very famous for it. And it's like you'll go to a place and there's people sharing mate. You might not even know a guy, and he's like, "Here, you want some?" And you're just like, "Thank you." It's just that kind of that camaraderie, that community in a lot of different towns and cities you go to, especially like the really small ones. There's just so many different places here that are just so cool. Like I would encourage anybody, if you've ever been interested in coming to Argentina, the only bad part is that it's so expensive to get here because it's so far away. Especially if you're wanting to move, it's very expensive. But once you get here and you bring dollars, your dollars go a really long way. So hotels and car rentals and things like this are going to seem a whole lot cheaper because they are in comparison to what you're paying in the United States. So you get to actually, it might be expensive to get here, but once you're here, you can have a really good time seeing a lot of beautiful places and doing a lot of fun things.
Yeah.
It's just a really cool country. It's a lot like I tend to always relate back to the United States because that's my frame of reference. But it's kind of like the United States of the South America. You have in the United States we have Florida and California with tons of beaches. If you like being hot and sweaty in the swamp, we got Louisiana. If you like being cold and stuff, you have like places like Montana and the beautiful mountains. And here it's like that.
Yeah.
They have everything here. And wonderful wine like Malbec. I haven't gone, but I'd love to go to Mendoza, which is a province that's bordering Chile, and they have some of the best wine in the world. And you can do like these wine tours, or you go and do wine tasting, and it's just there's a lot you can do here. It's a lot of fun.
How far south have you been?
I don't know which is. I think Bariloche is further south than San Martin de los Andes. I might be wrong about that.
Bariloche, you said?
Yeah, Bariloche. So Bariloche.
Bariloche.
Yeah, that's probably. I think that's the southernmost part that I've been to.
Okay, yeah. So that's pretty far south.
Yeah.
You haven't been to La
Tierra de Fuego.
Yeah, Tierra del Fuego.
I want to. My wife doesn't want to. She hates cold weather. But I want to visit every province and I want to hit like a lot of the big cities, or I shouldn't say big because some of these places aren't so big, but the main cities in each province, and just kind of get a taste of each, because each province has like their own types of empanadas. It's like if you get an empanada from Salta, I can't remember, but they put olives in their empanadas, so they put this in their empanadas. So their empanadas are huge in this province, and so it's like each province has like their own kind of, like the United States. Louisiana is different than Texas in certain ways, um, but yeah, it's just kind of a fun place to explore. And I would like to go further south and see the penguins. You can watch the whales and things like that.
Can you believe they've actually had military conflicts over the border down there? An area where hardly anybody wants to live.
I know. But the governments will fight over anything.
Yeah.
And then here it's very contentious between the Argentinians and the English because of Las Islas Malvinas, or what we call them in the English-speaking world, the Falkland Islands.
Yes, so, the Falkland Islands, yeah.
But you don't say that here if you come here, because they'll be very insulted, because they consider the islands theirs and that the English stole it from them. And in fact, they don't even recognize that the English possess it. They still consider it theirs now. But other than like the English, I can't really think of too much of Chile. Chile is another one that's kind of invaded and been a problem in their side over the years. But other than that, though, people get along. Yes. I've met Chileans, and there've been English people here. The English came here and laid the railroads, if I'm not mistaken. So there is some positive relationships between the English and the Argentines.
You know, that's one thing I've found interesting is you don't have a lot of railroads in South America.
Well, probably because of the Andes. There's a lot of and to poverty. I imagine places that aren't industrialized and advanced probably don't have that sort of stuff.
Well, I don't know if mountains elsewhere stop them from building railroads. Did the Alps stop them from building railroads?
Well, but I imagine there's more wealth there too. So it's like you have more money, you can overcome those obstacles a lot easier.
Yes, but there's also no railroads in areas where there are no mountains.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. It's like,
I mean, you could put a network of railroads in the rainforest, and that would not cost too much. And railroads are actually not as environmentally disruptive as other things. You can just kind of slice them down through the forest and keep things pretty much working pretty well.
You've been to Peru?
I've been to Peru and I've been to Colombia.
Okay, and neither one had a lot of railroads?
They didn't have any railroads.
Wow, that's interesting. Why did anybody explain why, or is it just kind of a question?
People have said usually there's just so much corruption that nobody wants to take a chance on the kind of investment to do it.
A lot of sense. Yeah, you can probably look. Okay, how bad is the government? Oh, okay, well that's probably why. Probably usually comes down to that.
Oh yes, it can. Yeah, if you.
Yeah, you don't see automobile industries here either. Like in Argentina had like their own automobiles, 40, 50 plus years ago, but now they don't manufacture any kind of automobiles anymore. Even the airline, I think they nationalized the Aerolíneas Argentinas, and it's constantly losing money. The government here wrecks everything.
Yeah,
as it does everywhere, generally speaking.
You ever go down to Ushuaia or
Ushuaia? See,
Ushuaia, yeah. If you want to go down way south.
Well, and then there's places up in like toward the north, like Misiones in Corrientes, which is in the Mesopotamian part of Argentina. So
Mesopotamian part of Argentina.
Yeah, I think that's what it's referred to. And it's more humid. I don't know if I guess more like rivers, lakes, kind of like, Louisiana, Mississippi, that kind of very, go closer to the equator, so it's a lot warmer. And there's actually a place I can't remember, but it's a place it's kind of like Niagara Falls. It's like this massive place that's right next to like this rainforest.
Iguazu Falls, yeah.
Yeah, that's it. I haven't seen that. I imagine it's hot and sweaty.
I've seen pictures.
Yeah, me too. I've seen videos.
It's pretty amazing.
There's also a pretty cool glacier in the south that parts of it collapse and people go and sit and watch the glacier in hopes they're lucky enough to see like these walls of ice just fall into the water. And you can take like walks on the glacier, and depending on what kind of thing you pay for, while you're walking on the glacier, you get to a point where they chip off some ice off the glacier and put it in a shot glass or a whiskey glass, and they pour you some whiskey so you can drink whiskey with the ice from the glacier. So you can do some pretty cool stuff here.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine it's pretty interesting. And of course, you've got the Aconcagua, which is the highest mountain outside of Asia in the world.
I forgot about that.
Well, yeah. Yeah, well, anything else? This has been a great talk. It looks like we probably ought to wrap this up. Anything else you want to say about this before we go, about Milei, or anything? Can't think of anything we really missed.
No, I think we covered a lot of it. Maybe if we do like a part 2, maybe after election or something like that, maybe we can. Okay, what about this? We can really strategize before. But I kind of like this free form discussion. I really enjoyed speaking with you.
I some issues you just want to explore them deep, and you just don't want to cut off the time.
Right.
I've had shorter shows, but this is and this is now my 4th show about Milei. And I've already talked to other people because I think this is something that we really need. You have to study victories and see why these happened, and if we can recreate it again elsewhere, and this will influence other people. I know. I don't know if you've heard, there have been some people who don't quite like his approach here, even though they are somewhat for liberty. Like I just heard from Gloria Alvarez recently, and some other people.
Well, I was kind of expecting, for example, last night my wife was watching Reason Magazine, had an interview with I think it's an economist or something, where it was like
there was Eduardo Marti and Gloria Alvarez. Yeah.
Oh, they were both on. Okay.
Yeah.
So when I saw that it was Reason TV, I automatically was like, "Ooh, I used to have a subscription when they were half decent. Now I don't know if I watch this, because I'm here. I know what's going on. So when I see that, I'm like, I hope they're not turning people off on Milei.
I don't know if there are ways, that I think you've got to look at everything though too and see what are ways where this might go wrong. I don't know. By the way, also, how if an American wants to support Milei or wants to try to help Milei out, what can they do?
They can send me money. No, but I don't know. I think his website, I think it's probably like milei2023.com.r or something like that. You might be able to donate through his website. But really sharing videos and just exposing the guy.
Well, I wondered also if there were any kind of regulations on that either,
Well, I wouldn't doubt it. That's the thing, because for example, like there's Western Union here. So like my parents for Christmas have sent, me money and you can go and exchange it. So I'm sure there's ways that, you can get money through Milei. But basically, I think the best way to do it would be to either contact somebody that's on Twitter that's directly connected with Milei and hope that they can respond and see if there's a way that you can support them financially. And I think there are methods like PayPal and such in which you probably can donate and it not be some sort of, weird under the table type of thing where it can all be honest and out in the open and transparent. But generally, make memes, share videos, watch his videos, actually listen to what he has to say before maybe, because like I said, Reason, like I've known about Reason for years and years. So when I saw that pop up, I was like, oh man, it was so long. I don't know if I want to give Reason that much of my time anymore.
I listened to it. I'll probably listen to it again. I might bring Eduardo on here because I want to hear what people have to say about what he's doing right. And we've got to just look at everything objectively and try to see because we've seen things go wrong and we want to make sure we can. But you have to focus on what you're doing right, but you also have to focus, at least think about where we could go wrong with this. But it seems like it seems like to me this is going to work out for the best. The main thing is, is what kind of dirty tricks the bad guys might pull on this. And unfortunately, we can't even rule out, maybe like an assassination attempt, like there was that attempt on the guy in Ecuador.
Right. That's okay. I was talking with a friend of mine. I was like, he was saying, don't be surprised if Milei is not some libertarian stalwart when he's. I was like, look, man, I'm not
Yeah.
looking for perfection. And I said,
You know,
do you think he's going to cave? He said, no, Milei will be dead. Milei will be dead before he caves.
And and he's in pretty good health too, I assume, right?
Yeah, I think so. He's actually at one point it looked like he was losing some weight.
That's
like
good.
his face was a little
Yeah.
fuller, and I think maybe it's a little thinner now.
Yeah, I mean, anytime anybody asks me to make a prediction about 2024, I said, well, there's always the possibility of a major medical issue for Trump or Biden, and it is possible.
Well, look how old they are too.
I know.
That's another thing. The average age of people in Congress, how old? It's like 66 or something like that.
Oh, it's so ridiculous now. Yeah, it's absolutely absurd what's going on.
So
American politics has become even more of a clown show, and and with all these indictments going on, it's to borrow the term from another pundit, we've become a banana republic with air conditioning.
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, do you have a website or anything, or not?
Yeah, actually, if anybody looks me up, Joram Roubique on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, most of the social medias they can find me. I'm launching my T-shirt website, my brand, libertymode.net. This is an exclusive for the Fountainhead Forum podcast. So when it's a big success, I'll look back and be like, it was. I launched it publicly on Chris's podcast. But that's what I'm working on now. It's not. It's in process, but we're ready. We'll be ready.
If I do enough Milei talks, maybe Milei will eventually want to come on this show.
I hope so. Welcome. And I have a friend.
But as famous as he is, I'm not getting my hopes up.
Yeah, me neither.
He's become a major rock star right now, and he's got more important things to do besides boost my show.
Well, me too, because I'm here, and it's hard to. I've met people on his team, but he's like, when he walks through a crowd, there's no way to get to him, and then he's so busy. Like the day after the primaries, he didn't sleep, and the whole that Monday he was probably on 7 or 8 shows, like radio shows, TV shows, one right after the other. Just he went from literally from CBS to NBC to ABC to PBS, and you could just change the channel, and he was just moving from studio to studio. The guy was just everywhere.
Yeah, well, he's just going from StreamYard to StreamYard on his computer. Yes. Well, okay. Well, it's been great having you on here, Joram. Please like the video or give it a thumbs up. Follow the channel. Subscribe to the channel. Buy my novel, Escape from the Village. Check out my Substack. I'm Chris Baker. This is the Fountainhead Forum, and we're out. Thank you, Joram. Bye-bye.